What's this? This 22 minutes.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. You got me?
Yes.
It was an
I'm gonna
emergency.
see.
Somebody died. So anyway, and another mess came up. That was since I just talked to you. Okay. Anyhow, okay, yeah. All right, we're here. That's just
Yeah, finally.
that's other business.
I hope you put your phone on silent because this is important. So today's conversation, DeSantis, don't say black. We're going to talk about Biden documents and the Memphis police, exactly what is going on with that. So let's start with DeSantis. So let me just set the topic. Florida gives its reason for rejecting proposed AP African American Studies course. Can you mute? Florida gives its reasons for rejecting proposed AP African American study courses. Florida rejected a proposed advanced placement course focused on African American studies because it included study of topics like movement of Black lives, Black feminism, and reparations, according to a list of concerns provided to CNN on Friday by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis' office. The one-page document prepared by the Florida Department of Education also questions the inclusion of certain Black authors and historians whose writings touch on critical race theory and Black communism. For example, the state objects to the inclusion of writing by Robert D.G. Kelly, a professor of American history at UCLA, who warns that simple establishing safe spaces and renaming campus buildings does nothing to overthrow capitalism. The state also said the course framework for the study of reparations, the argument to compensate Black Americans for slavery and other historical atrocities and oppressive acts, includes no critical perspective or balancing opinion in this lesson. No critical. So basically saying the African American studies has no critical perspective or balancing opinion in this lesson. All points and resources in this study advocate for reparations. In a previous draft version of concerns sent to CNN by DeSantis' office included an objection to the study of Black Power movement and the Black Panther Party. The draft version asserted that the Black Panther Party was based on an ideology of Marxism, Leninism. The goal of the BPP was fundamentally change or overthrow the goal of the Black Panther Party was to fundamentally change or overthrow the American government. However, in an updated version of the state's concerns, the references to the Black Panther Party were removed and replaced with an objection to the study of Black queer studies. That was reported by CNN. Forbes also is reporting DeSantis, who has made a number of reductive claims while adopting concerning education policies, was asked about the course at a press conference on Monday, in which he responded the state wanted education, not indoctrination, and pointed out to the course offering studies in queer theory and claiming it advocated for abolishing prisons. So what it sounds like is that the African American studies, some of the curriculum was trying to insert queer theory or Black LGBTQ and talk about reparations and talk about the Black Panther movement or any Black movement here in the United States. So, Judge, what are your thoughts on DeSantis' don't say black law?
I don't think it is don't say black. I understand academically what the problem is. Okay, what department does this go under? The history department, political science department, sociology, psychology. What department does this go under?
Well, we'll probably go under history.
How is it history? That's not teaching history. That's teaching something else. Queer studies is not history. See, that's where you run into the problem. Now, you mentioned somebody at UCLA. I'm an alumnus of UCLA. 1997, we started the Black History program. It has morphed into Black Studies program, cramming, and some of us who founded that, several of us died, and a lot of us went to jail and got arrested and a bunch of other stuff. John Huggins and Bunchy Carter died. Campbell Hall, when the US organization under Ron Karenga was trying to take the program over. I mean, it happens. But when they went from Black history, which was a critical analysis of the part Black people had played in America, and an objective look at it so that lessons could be gleaned from it for the reasons that we typically study history, not a memorization of dates and places, but significance so that we can guide our future, plan our future based on what's happened in the past. It switched over to something that a lot of us don't like now who are UCLA grads from back when.
Now,
We
fast
came
forwarded to Florida.
Florida is doing the same thing. These topics, what do they have to do with Black history and Black studies? And if I am a Black student, I don't want to be in something that is an analogy of, let's put it this way, the white queer movement or the white studies department. I mean, granted, when you study Western European history, you're studying a lot of white, but it's not even cast in that direction. It is history. If you're talking about the gay thing, that goes into sociology. That's not history. It hasn't been accomplished yet. We just have 5 to 6, maybe 10 years of it, which is not enough to have a historical impact because we don't know what's going to go on as a result of that. You see, a lot of what is in there should be in a sociology department, should be in a political science department, should be in a history department. And they're trying to cut it all up, slice it up to fit into a department called studies department. So do you have a white studies department, an Asian studies department, or what? You can have Black history, you can have white history, you can have Asian history, Native American history, because it fits into a big picture. This is not. And the other thing I look at, and I had a discussion with one of my former roommates not long ago, was why would you open your mouth and tell folk that you are discussing Black radicalism instead of just going ahead and doing it? See, we look at it as, damn, didn't these people learn anything from 50 years ago? You just go out and tell folk, oh, hey, look, I'm going to do this. You talk about the Black Panther Party and the methodology on that, you don't advertise it, you just do it if you're going to. You talk about, are we talking about Marcus Garvey? Oh, you can teach Booker T. Washington. They've got schools named after Booker T. Washington, and the woke folk today seem to approve of him. But when I was in my 20s, we looked at Booker T. Washington as a villain, and the hero was W.E.B. Du Bois, who is now looked at askance. So it goes up and down, but you should be able to deal with reading what you're trying to get into. This is not like you're trying to have a Black program in a Black institution. You're trying to do this mainstream and you run into a mess when you don't even know how to cast it. You don't say Black studies, you put it down Black history in the history department. the American experience as it relates to political science in the poli-sci department. The sociology of the Black queer, you can put that in the sociology department, but you don't come up with Black studies because you're going to run into the same thing that these clowns at the Berkeley Medical School did way back 50 years ago that led to the demise of affirmative action. We begged them not to then, but they went ahead and did it because they had a deal worked up, and we're all suffering from it 50 years later. So there are ways of doing things, and what I was looking at was just unwise, and it's just like BLM. BLM is not about Black Lives Matter. BLM is a fundraising hustle, a pimp show to raise money for LGBTQ. And as you and I have seen, if you go to their site, it says we raise money. 1/3 of it goes to Act Blue, which is a Democratic Party fundraising shield. 1/3 of it goes to their affiliated organization, LGBTQIA+, and 1/3 of it goes to BLM, so you can get the people that are in on the top end, mansions out in LA, properties, vacations, and big money payouts for their relatives. See, you
let me
put
say
yourself
this.
in that. What are you doing? Think about what you're saying.
The
revolution will not be televised. Remember
that? Let me say this, because this is advanced placement. This is AP studies. So this will most likely be for higher ups, probably high schoolers.
Yeah.
But his bill is saying he's trying to banish African American studies across the board because he doesn't want certain things that they're implementing in the syllabus for AP courses. That is wrong. You don't just say
wait. Where does she say that?
It says the state based its assertions of the course on an 81-page syllabus from February.
But where does it
according to the list of concerns, their objections over 6 topics of study, all in the 4th and final unit, when students study movements and debates. So he's banning
that.
But so he's banning African American studies because at AP African American studies.
That's not what I said.
What is your point? What is the question?
The point is that you can teach all of these things if you properly associate it. Some of the things you're talking about go into history, some go into political science, some go into sociology, some go into psychology. But you don't come up with something Asian American, African American, Nordic American studies. You're going to run into a lot of hot water real quickly. So what you do
he's saying he doesn't want it taught.
That's not what he's saying.
What he's saying?
If you read that thing, it says he does not want this to be a course like history, like political science. Studies department. What the hell does that sound like?
Florida rejected a proposed advanced placement course focused on African American studies because
I agree.
Let me finish. Because Because it included study of topics like the movement of Black lives, Black feminism, and reparations.
Okay, now, did you get what I said? You don't have a course that teaches these things as a collective because academically they're unrelated. They always have been. What you do is you teach those subjects as part of a bigger picture, and then you can do it. So if you want to do it, they operate on the basis of stupidity rather than by understanding what is meant by any means necessary. The revolution will not be televised. So why the hell are you trying to publish it? That's the point. It's unsophisticated and it's stupid.
What's stupid?
The whole goddamn thing of we're going to have Black studies instead of Black history, Black political science, etc., where we're going to teach these things as part of our overall curriculum. Somebody just wants to show out. Last time I went through and looked at the UCLA Black Studies Department, I almost vomited. From all of these righteous brothers that were struggling to get something together, I'm looking at a faculty sitting around in a goddamn lounge, sipping Chablis and nibbling on wafers and cheese.
But the problem that I have, the fact is that when you singling out African American studies and you're not singling out Asian or Hispanic studies, that is a problem. That
what
is
Asian
racism.
or Spanish? What Asian and Spanish studies are you singling out or not singling out?
He's not banning or proposing to reject Asian studies or Hispanic studies.
There's no Asian or Hispanic studies.
How do you know? In the state of Florida,
what they do is they put it in with the bigger picture. It's
no,
taught,
they do have it in the state of Florida.
It's taught as part of history. If
this
you
is
said,
advanced placement course.
There is no such goddamn course as one damn thing talking about people. That's going to run you up a creek anyway. That's like running into a block wall, and black folk don't have that kind of numbers in Florida.
What?
They do in the Miami area. But what you have to do is, if you want to get it in, be effective about it. Because what you've got is an LGBT gods where they're trying to get black folk to be the front for what they're trying to do. That's what you're looking at. And everybody is dodging around using the proper name. Just like you read BLM and it's not Black Lives Matter, it's gay stuff. That's their right to do it. But you have Black Lives Matter, and the first point they used to have under what we believe is, quote, we are for the destruction of the traditional nuclear family. That's got nothing to do with black folk. That's a front. And what the whole purpose of what they were doing was to sneak in a thing about gay studies. If they want to do that, then let them run with it. Don't try to sneak it in under black studies. That's a front. And frankly, that's had such a small part to do with black history in this country. Why is it even included? See, that's what they're doing. What you just ran down about the black queer thing. Why is that even included? It's had an insignificant part in the process of black adaptation, struggle against, or inclusion or segregation in this country. So why does that become a stipulated topic?
So what again, why? So you're saying that no other group is being targeted to be banned, courses are being banned. Let me finish. If you let me finish what I was about to say.
It's a waste of time though.
No, it's not. I'm asking you a question. Are you meaning to tell me that black AP African American studies are the only courses being rejected because there are no other courses specifically for Asian or Hispanics group in Florida? Are you saying that there are no AP courses in Hispanic?
That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that the way it is construed, black studies in Florida is designed to be gay studies, just like Black Lives Matter, the organization, has very little to do with the matter or worth of black lives and a whole lot to do with gay.
But in Florida, they already have the Don't Say Gay law. So if you have a course in African American studies, you don't have to teach that. Yeah, you don't have to teach queer. You don't have to teach gay if you already have a law saying don't say gay in Florida.
Go back and just read what you just read about 5 minutes ago.
I've read that. So what I'm saying is, why is he banning the whole course when you just don't have to teach about LGBTQ?
Excuse me. Because it's a front.
You're not understanding now.
I understand. You don't, because you haven't seen it.
You haven't either. No, you have not. You have not seen the course curriculum. I just read it.
Look, I saw this co-optation over 50 years. I paid careful attention to it. Friends of mine, acquaintances of mine died behind it.
I asked you a question. How can you teach something that is against the law?
You're
So
not
you can't
teaching
co-opt.
anything.
Wait a minute,
Excuse me.
slow down. You cannot co-opt a studies if it's against the law to talk about gay history or gay anything.
Okay, who's in control of this?
What are you talking about? You're talking about the Board of Education.
Who would be in control of the advanced placement course? And that's just one aspect of it. Who's running the advanced placement course that is titled Black Studies?
The Board of Education.
Okay, now, why don't they include Black history in the history programs that are advanced placement? Why don't they include the sociological aspects of the Black experience in the sociology programs? Why don't they include the Black experience in et cetera, et cetera? See, in other words, what else is being implied in here is it's an easy way to get around us doing our own homework. I mean, Black studies. I look at it as, okay, what if I wanted a refresher course on the impact of Black folk in the political process? Is that going to be in Black studies, or do I have to sit through a bunch of drivel about the Black queer experience mask so it doesn't run afoul of the Florida prohibition? And by the way, Florida does not prohibit it. It just says it's up to the parents.
Prohibit what?
Talking about gay. It's up to the parents.
They can't talk about it in the school curriculum.
No, excuse me. They can if the parents say okay.
No, they cannot.
They can. It's up to the parents.
No, it's not up to the parents.
In other words,
you cannot teach that in Florida.
Excuse me. The way it works is you just can't come in and this is what we're going to do without the parents saying it's okay.
No, that's just one. He did several laws with that. You cannot teach LGBT, and you have to include parents when it has to do with activities or anything else with LGBT. You can't convert. Wait. No. You can't. Wait a minute. If your kid come to school saying to call me a boy, you cannot do that unless you consult with the parents. And you cannot teach LGBT in the school system. He passed several laws regarding that.
Now, the gay and LGBTQ are not the same thing. LGBTQ is a cult. You can't teach Catholicism, Protestantism. You can't teach Hindu. You can't teach Buddhism. You can't teach Islam in school either. You can't teach LGBTQ.
You can't say gay.
That's not what that law says. That's the way the gay folks
you can't teach gay. You can't promote gay.
There is nothing in that law that says you can't say gay. That's what the media has done to try to propagandize it negatively.
It doesn't matter. You can't teach it.
There's a big difference.
But you can't teach it. That's the bottom line. So let me ask you this question.
What you're giving is the party line for the anti-bunch.
You can't teach it in Florida. You can't teach it in Florida, period. You can't teach it.
Okay.
Fine. Let's go back to the African American. Are you saying that you think it's okay? Because part of the thing he's saying, he don't want the Black Panther movement to be taught either.
Who in the hell is going to teach it?
Just answer my question. Do you have a problem? Do you have?
Are you? It
doesn't matter. He's saying he doesn't want it taught.
I understand that. So why the hell are the damn fools saying that's what they want to teach?
Why not learn about the Black Panther Party movement?
Well, if you do teach them, you don't televise the revolution.
How you can't teach something in the school system that is prohibited?
Excuse me. Nobody would have known to worry about it.
Oh my God!
Will not
you don't know how the Board of Education works.
Look! I do know.
No, you don't.
Very well how it works. And why are
you can't sneak in something and not make it broadcast?
You don't have to sneak.
You have to get that approved.
It becomes a footnote.
You have to get your syllabus approved. You can't just come and teach anything.
Excuse me. Why do you have to label it that? Are you a damn fool enough?
Label what? Black Panther? What are you going to label it as?
You say the role of Black militancy as a political force.
Yes, and that's what he's banning. Yes.
You can't ban that.
You can't teach it.
You can't ban it because, goddamn it, if you look at the congressional record, when it comes to the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the modifications, it says for thousands of pages. That's what they're relying on.
And he
So
said
if
you can't teach it.
He didn't say that. That's not what it says.
Movements and debates.
Movements cannot be dealt with that. Debates is one you put up one side contrasting with the other, and you want to sit there and debate it in class. That's not how you approach it. We had to go through that crap back in the 60s to get what we got in.
He is objecting to the study of movements. You can't talk about it. Can't be taught.
Okay, study of movements. You cannot deal with the 1960s without dealing with militancy, whether it is white folk with Students for Democratic Society, SDS, whether it's what happened in Chicago when you had the police riots in 1968 at the Democratic Party convention, whether it's the Black Student Union phenomenon, Black power movement, whatever the hell's going on, where the whole civil rights movement became obsolete.
He's saying you can't
get into it.
But he's said
not
no.
Saying that.
Yes, he did. I just read it to you.
No, you didn't read that to me. What you read was some labels. You read some labels that have nothing to do with the subject.
He specifically said movements and debates.
Okay. Well, you have to deal with what is meant by the law.
I did read it. And no, you disagree with it. Yes, I did.
That's not
yes, I did. Because you don't want to admit that him including movements is wrong.
The policy is not 2 paragraphs. If you read it, it goes on for quite a few pages.
Okay, so you did you pull up the policy?
I did, and I looked at it.
What does it say?
It is not
read it to us.
That. I'm not going to read it to it because
you don't have it.
I don't have it in front of me. I don't have to. Why the hell do you think I went to school?
So we all went to school.
Look. I haven't read a lot of law in 45, 50, 55 years, but I can tell you what it is and applied it.
He didn't even pass a policy. So what policy are you talking about that he rejected?
I'm not talking about his policy passing. I'm talking about the state policy that's in effect. He's just explaining his view of what.
No, he's not explaining it. They're rejecting the course.
He's
rejecting the whole course as a whole.
He doesn't have the authority.
No, the Florida government has the authority, and they rejected it.
They did. He's just explaining his view of it. Now, will you get that through your head?
I know that. So we're talking about the state of Florida.
It's an administrative agency, and
right? Why are they rejecting? They're rejecting the AP African American Studies in the state of Florida. He's saying, and then when the governor goes up there to explain, he said because we don't want certain things to be taught that's in the syllabus. And one of the things are the movements. Yes, they was trying to bring in the queer theory and all this other shit with the LGBTQ, but they're also eliminating debates and movements.
Never mind. That's a very simplistic view, and it's not accurate when you get that simplistic. I'm not even going to go any further into it. Never mind.
Because you.
Okay.
My point
never
with
mind.
this.
Okay.
No,
okay.
There's no never mind because other people that want to talk on it is going to come up and comment.
They come and talk on it.
But my point is this: they're eliminating the whole course. You're eliminating a whole course. Okay. It's one thing to not talk about something, but to eliminate the whole thing, that is a problem.
Okay.
Biden documents. That's next on the list. Biden documents.
Okay. Well, I told you, I've told people on this forum before that quite recently we had a mock trial on the Hunter Biden laptop laptops, plural. There were 3 of them. We had proceedings in front of a mock jury that was randomly selected. It was representative. And their conclusion after a week-long proceeding was that probable cause had been established dictating that an investigation should occur. What I'm looking at is based on what was on the laptops and the sequestration in Biden home places of certain documents when he was vice president. There is an implication that they may have something to do with what was on the laptops, which is rank criminality and needs to be investigated because there are some very bad things on those laptops that have nothing to do with Hunter Biden's efforts to be a porn star. They implicate the president at the time and the vice president at the time. And they have not released information on what's in these documents, but I would offer this. The difference between the Trump situation and the Biden situation is that at the time Trump came into possession of these documents, he was president of the United States, and in several of the articles of the Constitution, they give the president unlimited authority to declassify documents in any way, shape, form, or fashion he chooses. He's commander-in-chief of the military, and he's also chief diplomat of the country. The case is United States Department of the Navy versus Egan, Eagan, and I believe that was 1987. And it goes into some of the considerations. And if you read some of the join-ins by other justices besides the one that wrote the majority opinion, you'll see some of the discussion on that. Biden was vice president. He did not constitutionally possess the authority to declassify. When he came into possession of these documents, he was a vice president. The documents were in his possession for quite a number of years, and there is the implication that they may have something to do with what's on those laptops. The federales have had those laptops or the contents thereof for quite some time, and we don't seem to see any rush in going into them. But some of the stuff on there that we observed, we advised should not be made public at this time because of the threat to the security of the country. One of the individuals involved in this was a person who had been an attorney general, prosecutor in the state of New York, in the Manhattan district for quite a number of years. He is a very prominent defense lawyer now, and the other individual has the same credentials. We looked at it and said this is dangerous. There is, in fact, probable cause to look into this for at least Foreign Agents Registration Act violations, if nothing else. And the question raises its head of what documents are we talking about, because we don't have as many as we had with Trump, but we are so much less in terms of their number, so much fewer in terms of their number, that there is an indication that they are specific. And right now, there are some questions that raise their heads, and we have a horse called hypocrisy that somebody is doubling up on. Now, that said, we need to be patient and see what's going on, and the government needs to act with expeditious attention to these matters. And I'm sure the now Democratic Party loss of control of the House might result in the Republican Party going forward with an investigation of what's going on. Now, we need to find out. because what we saw is a threat to the national security. And
So,
I include myself.
so if right, so if it's a problem of the documents that Biden had in his house, and apparently they're finding more and more as they searched, I think, 2 homes or whatever. But if that's impeachable or whatever, if charges are brought up against him, right, and he resigns or he gets impeached, what does that how does that affect Donald Trump? Because if you do 1 to 1, you got to do it to the other.
Trump hasn't done anything.
So,
See, that's what I'm talking about the media hype. See, Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution says the president and vice president can be impeached and, if convicted, removed from office. The 12th Amendment says if they're impeached, they can never again hold office. The 3 categories are as follows: bribery, treason, and misdemeanors or felonies committed while in office.
mm-hmm.
Treason is the only crime defined in the Constitution itself, and the requirements for conviction are very specific. Bribery is another matter, and one of the things that comes into play is Biden himself, Joe Biden, during a C-SPAN conference that was televised. It was in January, about 4 or 5 years ago, and he says himself, I guess I committed bribery when I told the Ukrainians that if they didn't back this guy off of my son's case, I was going to withhold $14 billion in loan guarantees. And he had elaborated upon him being assigned that task by the Obama administration. Also, there is the fact that you have Article 6 that says such treaties as have been ratified by the Senate are part of the supreme law of the land. One of those treaties, or one set of treaties, deals with Interpol and also with Ukraine, wherein we agree to participate in the apprehension, detention, and extradition of individuals who are wanted. Ukraine, 2 weeks before the November 2020 election, unsealed their previously heavily redacted document that was an indictment, multi-page long indictment, and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden both are mentioned in those documents as indicted parties for bribery, subornation of treason, intimidation of witnesses, etc., conspiracy, and another number of crimes, all of which under Article 6 would be cognizable under Article 2, Section 4. Now, the problem they have, but ties in with Trump, is that they insisted on going after Trump with 2 sets of impeachment instruments, one of them while he was president, and 2 in an unprecedented fashion while he was no longer president for an office he held previously. They did not state anything that was cognizable or proceedable against for under Article 2, Section 4. We had, take the first one. He abused his authority and he obstructed Congress. That is not bribery. That's not treason. And it's no articulable crime under American law. Every time a president refuses to sign off on something or vetoes something, that's obstructing Congress. So that doesn't count. And the other thing is the idiots that sent it over didn't realize that Article 1 of the Constitution says that Congress shall consist of 2 chambers. One is the House and the other one is the Senate. So as soon as it arrived in the Senate, they took a poll. Did this impact it? Do you think this obstructed you? No. So since the Congress was a 2-part organization, if one party did not even think it was interfered with or obstructed, then that counts out, and the other one didn't state a crime, so it's out. Now, when they went the second time, they set an interesting precedent. They went after Trump when he was no longer president of the United States, and that precedent still stands, which means the current Congress can go after, not Congress, but the current House can go after Biden for when he was a vice president. And under the 12th Amendment, if he was convicted of that by the Senate, which isn't likely, but it's still going to be a real live mess, we might wind up with, oh, hell, a Watergate situation where that likelihood becomes more and more increasingly large as more comes out. It's going to be a real live political mess. As I said often over the last few years, be careful what the hell you ask for. You just might get it. Now,
so basically, President Biden's classified documents is really impeachable compared to Trump is not.
Maybe. But you see, the problem with Biden is Biden has a pending indictment, a long one, an organized crime indictment, naming him in Ukraine. And Article 6 of the Constitution says ratified treaties are part of the supreme law of the land. So we're supposed to apprehend, detain, and extradite, but we're not because of his office. That, by the way, is why Biden does not go to Ukraine, because it would be ill-advised. Hell, they might want to take him into custody, or Russians capture him and on behalf of the Ukrainian state hold him. Now, they would probably be able to claim diplomatic immunity, but it might get nasty. So that's why they send word Salad Imhoff, a.k.a. Harris, over there.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a big live mess that is opened up.
So what should happen next?
Let's see what the hell happens. It's in the hands of the House. They have the impeachment power, they have the subpoena power, they have the investigative power, because it involves money being spent. There is a big inference that one of the reasons we want to send M1 tanks and M2, M3 Bradleys and other military hardware over to Ukraine is so that Biden can bribe his way out of an indictment, he and his son, and be dismissed, so it's no longer hanging over his head when he's no longer in office. That is impeachable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, or arguably impeachable. Also, from some of the things that are on that laptop, they might have an ability to actually prove treason. Now, back to another point by reference or inference. I don't have the laptops in front of me, but I know what I read on them. I know the transcripts that I read. So that's in my head, but I can't quote them to you, and I can't tell you the page and paragraph where you will find what I read. And you have to understand another thing about American law. When the Constitution was written, most of the people in this country were illiterate or semi-literate at best, and where most of these laws or the principles behind them came into being, hardly anybody was literate. So very little was on what was in writing, and a whole lot was on what somebody witnessed and could regurgitate in terms of testimony. This is what I saw. This is what I heard. This is what I smelt. This is what I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that said, it might be interesting, very interesting to see the outcomes. And by the way, one thing that bothers me about our involvement with Ukraine is after World War II, Ukraine escaped the prosecutions, for the most part, that were levied on the rest of the Europe for Nazi collaborators and sympathizers. And it seems from one reading of history that Ukraine supplied a lot of Waffen SS volunteers. That's the Nazi Party apparatus army, and also were responsible for rounding up a lot of Jews, gypsies, poor people, minorities, and handicapped folk and sending them off to extermination camps. But they escaped for the most part because Stalin said he wasn't going to allow it. So a
Mhm.
lot of those leaders that have been hobnobbing with America to appeal for American assistance have pictures of themselves or wife beaters, tops, and so on over the years with prominent swastika tattoos on their bodies. And Ukraine has a very large Nazi resurgence that has become part of its fabric. And Russia, amongst other things, is saying it is saving the world from a resurgence of Nazism.
Mhm. Um, Before we get into the Memphis police, I do see somebody request. So, guys, if you want to start requesting to come up and speak, please do so. Just real quickly before I bring in the speaker, Davos 2023, the World Economic Forum. We didn't discuss much of that last week. That took place last week. But Friday, Judge, when me and you was on the phone and I was playing Al Gore when he was on one of the panels talking about climate change. um you made several comments during his speech, right? Which was very firing or whatever. But any thoughts on this World Economic Forum? Because I think we
Well, let
need
me
to.
say this,
Mhm.
but I thought about it. I can't say anything about Al Gore because the law office I was with represented Al Gore from before he became U.S. Senator, while he was U.S. Senator, and while he was U.S. President. So attorney client would kick in, and I can't say anything about that.
Oh, you can't talk about what he said at the
Well, in
World
other
Economic Forum.
words, yes, I would not be ethically on all fours if I talked about essentially a former client.
Oh, okay. Never mind. We'll move on. So before we get into Memphis, let me bring the speaker in, and then we get into the Memphis police. Was it Stepper? You can unmute. Hello,
Anybody?
Stepper. We can't hear you. I don't know what's going on with your audio. All right. So okay, let's see. Let's try this again. Stepper,
Yeah,
unmute.
yeah. Hey, what's going on, Judge and Dana? Yeah,
Hello.
no, I noticed you had the Desantis thing going on in the title. I looked at the curriculum and I brought this up the other day. A lot of the stuff in the curriculum it talks about Black feminism and Black feminists, also queer studies. That's a part of the curriculum. What are your thoughts on when it comes to African American history and why do you think that would be in there and why would that relate to African American history? In the curriculum that DeSantis said.
That's a very good question. That's what I was
Mhm.
talking about earlier. It doesn't relate to African American history. That's why you morph history into studies so you can pick up on these soft things where it's strictly ideological rather than historical. In other words, if you're trying to talk about let's say, the goodness of communism as a system versus a critical analysis of the part it's played in world history, those are two different things. So bringing up those topics is an interesting way of sliding them in, but has nothing to do with Black history. That's what I was saying. That's a sociological phenomenon. So why is it not covered in a sociology situation? All I was saying, I wasn't disagreeing with Dana. What I was pointing out is history repeats. And just like 55 years ago, there were difficulties getting something out there to be studied. The people that accomplished that to a great extent, are still around, or at least a few of us are, and nobody asked us how to put that in place without being offensive to a system that will cut you off at the knees. So you raise a very good point. How do those things have anything to do with Black history? Thank you
Yep,
for asking the question.
I think that is a great question because I did put that down in my notes. Aside from me, I disagree with just not having that course or taking out other aspects of movements, i.e., the Black Panther Party movement. But why is it that when it comes to Black studies now, why do you have to link us with LGBTQ, like combining LGBTQ with Black? That is something that is intentional. And just from a macro point of view of it, it is something that they're trying to how can I say it? You go from I'm Black and I'm proud to feminizing Black men because it's too much noise. Judge, can you mute? Can you mute? Feminizing. Can you mute?
That's not me, and I'm not even near my phone. I'm in another room. Hold
Everybody
on.
else is muted except for you. Whatever you're touching. Feminizing.
Hold on.
So they're linking up LGBT studies or theories with African American studies, and it does not have nothing, it has nothing to do with African American studies. So why is it that anything, whether it's in entertainment, music, now our history, we have to combine it and share with LGBTQ? I think that's offensive, and I think that is intentional to feminize and dissolve our race. But go ahead, Stepper.
Yeah. No, I just wanted the thoughts on that because I do believe that a lot of people tend to galvanize behind the term of Black and African American people when it comes to any type of race relation, whether it's reparations, whether it's justice, whether it's equality. They always cover it up as civil rights, and as African American, yada yada. And then they, combine it with people of color or sexuality or whatever the case is. And I see a problem with that, but I also see, hey, because we've ignored it in the past, so many people think it's okay to use us to get their agenda accomplished, and then completely forget about Black Americans. And I do see that, that's anti-Blackness, without respecting. Another thing I wanted to ask, I wanted to know about where do we see reparations going. I know that's like just consistently always being brought up in the rooms, but and when it comes to reparations, but what do you think is the next step of reparations going to the next level? Do you see any type of federal work being done with reparations?
The only, in my particular point of view, the only entity that could afford to pay out reparations, and that is questionable, would be the federal government. And you would have to have an enablement and appropriations bill passed by Congress, House and Senate, signed off on by the president, that would have to pass muster in the federal courts. That's reparations. Now, reparations as modeled by San Francisco, there's a problem with it's empty because San Francisco doesn't have the money and they can't get into the California state funds without the state going through it, and they have to survive an attack by the ballot initiative process in California, and then other states. California has talked about it, which would make it possible, but California is too broke to do it. Now, when you talk about San Francisco saying we're going to have reparations, here's a problem. Way back in the 60s in Berkeley, which is part of the same county that San Francisco is in, they took advantage of a Supreme Court decision that said students can register to vote either where their permanent residences are or where they go to school. So a bunch of them that went to Berkeley registered, and they elected a slate of people to the Berkeley City Council. A colleague of mine, the late DeArmey Bailey, was people who was elected. As soon as the students went home, the residents put a ballot initiative on the ballot and recalled every one of the newly elected students. So whether or not San Francisco's initiative would survive that is questionable. The other thing is, too, it's a municipality, but it is inside of a county. And whether it would survive county recall is another matter entirely. And as to whether it would pass muster on the state level is something else. Now, historically, January 14th, 1865, General William Tecumseh Sherman issued an edict as military commander of a southern district that every black family, upon application, would be awarded 40 acres of confiscated rebel land and one army mule. His commander, Ulysses Grant, approved it. Abraham Lincoln approved it. The House and Senate and Congress approved it. And it got implemented, and for 6 months it was working well. Well, when they wound up being reviewed, the new president, Johnson from Tennessee, a Democrat, said he didn't want his buddies losing their land, and he vetoed the bill. He issued another executive order, as the first one had been issued as a military order, since the South was not back in the Union with the exception of Tennessee. He did not have to go through the legislative process. So that ended our reparations. And I know that my grandfathers, grandmothers, great aunts and uncles, my parents, hell, myself, we talked about 40 acres and a mule. And I used to joke when people wanted me to repay certain things as I'm engaging in self-help on the reasonable interest compounded semi-annually on 40 acres in one damn mule. But in my lifetime, this is the third time reparations has come up. My parents talked about twice, and my grandparents did too. And one of my grandparents was 15 when the Civil War was over, and he certainly talked about it. So it is what it is. It would be nice, but
All right.
I'm just thinking about politics as they are today and whether or not that would get through on a national level. So good luck
I want to go
to us.
I want to go to another speaker, then I want to get into the Memphis police. Jesus Girl. Did I say that right?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon.
Morning in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah. Good
afternoon where
morning.
you
Good
are.
morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Judge Brown.
Good
Piece of
morning.
reparations to the room. Just want to just step up and just say a little bit about what we're talking about here as it relates to the federal, a federal reparative justice claim. Absolutely, Judge Brown is so correct in that it would definitely have to be a federal act or mandate to administer any type of reparations, which would have to include all 5 forms of reparations. And I'll talk a little bit about those forms. And I'm going to make this quick, but I'm going to Google that so I can make sure I understand and relay the 5 forms of reparations as so eloquently discussed at the P. Diddy's what do you call that thing that he does every year?
Revolt
Yes,
Summit?
ma'am, the Revolt Summit. It was the first time I heard our task force, the AB 31 task force chair, Camila Moore, talk about the 5 forms of reparations. That definitely will have to be a federal mandate. Now, those 5 forms are rehabilitation, restitution, compensation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. So that's that, and that's on the federal level. And this is just my humble opinion, and this is from what I have gathered as being a Californian and being a part of the grassroots movement here in California. I'm a member of the NAASD group here, and so as it relates to that San Francisco initiative, in my view, it's just a total distraction, and it's meant to muddy the waters for whatever reasons. It's just a distraction, because we are clearly working on the second part of the report. The initial report was issued in July of